Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's session. The session we have coming up next is Disney Magic, Transforming the Student Experience with World-Class Customer Service from Wendy Schindler of Gateway. Before I introduce Wendy, I just want to take a moment to let you know that this session is being recorded. All recordings from all sessions today will be going out tomorrow through an email from Eventbrite. If you don't see it, make sure to check your clutter, as sometimes they do end up over there. Also, during the session, feel free to chat any questions or comments that you have, and we'll make sure to get those answered. Wendy, to introduce our speaker, is at Gateway Community and Technical College. She is the program manager in grants, or the new project manager in grants, and has recently transitioned from an academic advisor. And Wendy, I got that from Amy, so I hope that's okay. But without further ado, I'm going to pass this on over to Wendy and let her start her presentation. I'll get your first slide up for you, Wendy. Let me hit start. There we go. Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy, and I do work at Gateway. I just transitioned into my new role, so I've been project manager of grants for less than 2 weeks. So up until now, I've been in student services for a long time. So a lot of what I talk in this presentation will be through that lens. But even though I work at Gateway now, I used to work at Disney World. And so that is where I learned a lot of the things we're going to talk about. So Disney is known for their customer service. It is something that kind of defines them as a company. When you go to a Disney park, whether it's Disneyland or Disney World or somewhere else in the world, you are well taken care of when you are there. When I worked there, I worked in a restaurant called the Coral Reef. It's at Epcot, and I was a seater. So sort of like a hostess, I sat people at their tables to eat. It does not take any rocket science to seat people at a table. They told me what table to take them to. I took them and made small talk, and that was it. So, and then other things behind the scenes. But I didn't do anything particularly difficult. And yet, before I could start, I had to go through a week of classroom training that had nothing to do with the actual logistics of my job, but it had everything to do with taking care of the guests of Disney. A whole week of that. So Disney knows how to do it, and they do it well. So by the time we are done, you will know how to pass the ultimate test at Disney World, which is, how do you answer the question, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? And I'll give you a hint. The answer is not to roll your eyes and sigh at the person, no matter how much you may want to when you get a question like that. So before we get too much deeper into this, I like to address that, this is education. And so sometimes customer service isn't the first thing that we think of when it comes to education. So at Disney, they have Cinderella's Castle. It's right there on the left side of the slide. It is the main attraction at Disney World. It is the icon of the park. But you know what? Just about 10 minutes up the road is Universal Studios. And you can go to Universal Studios and see a different castle. You can go see Hogwarts. In Orlando, you have your choice of theme park castle that you want to go to. And so customer service becomes really important to Disney to keep its customers coming back over and over and over again. And in education, students also have a choice. They have their choice of school. They can choose to go to ours, or they can choose to go elsewhere. And customer service has a lot to do with how they make their decisions. I will not read this whole thing to you, but there are definitely statistics out there that talk about how important customer service and customer experience is. People who have bad experiences are more likely to share that with others than when they have a good experience. In the higher ed world in particular, we lose up to 18% of students simply because of customer service issues. That is a lot of students that don't get retained for something that's very easy to fix. There are a lot of things we don't have control over, but the way we treat students, we have control over that. There's also studies that suggest that an increase in student satisfaction makes them more likely to persist. So if they are happy with the college and their experience here, they're more likely to stick around and do well and graduate. In particular, first-year students really need a lot of caring and community, so customer service can help make them feel more connected to the college. And retention it's complex. It is a really there's a lot of things that go into retention. It's not all about customer service, of course, but customer service helps, and every little bit helps when it comes to retention. And so this is something we have complete control over. So why not take the time to make sure that we know how to treat our students well? All right, so first of all, one of the first things you learn as an employee of Disney is that every guest is important. They are not called customers, they are called guests when they are in the park. And each and every one of them is important. So what does that mean? What do we take away from that? Well, first of all, consistency is key. Every guest at Disney deserves the same experience as other guests. No one should miss out due to circumstances of the day. So for example, when I worked at the Coral Reef and I sat guests at Disney World, I often had to work late well after everyone had been seated. There was no one else for me to seat, but one of us always worked late. And that's because when our guests left, we always wished them a good night or a good day if it was earlier and thanked them for dining with us. Well, the last table of the night deserves that send-off just as much as the first table of the day does. And so somebody was always there late to make sure every guest got that experience of, being told to have a good night at the end of the day. So we can do that with our students. It is really easy to be fresh in the morning and by the end of the day, feel like you've answered the same question 100 times, and that last student comes in and they ask you that same question all over again, and it is real easy to fall into a not so happy attitude about that. But we have to remember, this student doesn't know that we answered the same question 100 times earlier. They weren't there for that. It's not like you told them and they forgot necessarily. They are brand new walking in your office right now. So you need to be as on with them as you were with your first student of the day. So it's important to remember that because it's easy to get bogged down in the day. Disney also has this idea of reasonable satisfaction. So the idea that sometimes we have to go out of our way to satisfy a guest as long as it's reasonable. And that is easy to do with students too. But for example, at Disney World, so on your screen right now, you see a Mickey Mouse ice cream pop. Those are ubiquitous at Disney. They are everywhere. And so let's say a family comes up, they buy one of those for their child. Child takes 3 steps away and drops that ice cream on the ground. That is devastating for that child at Disney World. It's really sad for them. And so it is perfectly reasonable to give them another one. It's okay to do that because that will make all the difference in that family's day just by replacing this little ice cream bar that costs Disney next to nothing. But we don't give them the whole concession cart and let them walk away with it and tell them, have a great day, here's all the ice cream in the world, because that wouldn't be reasonable. So with my students, especially in advising, sometimes a student says, hey, I work all day, every day. I work a typical 9-to-5 job. I can't get into any of the appointments that you have. Okay, well, can you be here at 5:30? I'd be happy to set an appointment at 5:30. And, usually the student can, or maybe a little later. Now, that's perfectly reasonable. I can adjust my day to be able to see that student. I'm not going to meet them at 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to meet them necessarily at 9 a.m. on Sunday because that wouldn't be reasonable for me. But it's perfectly reasonable for me to stay a little late or come a little early for a student whose schedule, especially working with our population of students in community colleges, a lot of them have jobs. And so being able to be reasonable, but also satisfy what they need is a good idea. And then lastly, with every guest being important at Disney, we're taught to remember that every guest's priority is a little different, and we shouldn't project what we think they want onto them. We need to find out what they really want. So when I go to Disney World, it's one of my favorite places in the world. One of the first things I want to do is go to the Magic Kingdom Park, and I want to see a big domicile that someone lives in that is my favorite attraction. And most people would take that statement and say, oh, Wendy wants to see Cinderella's castle. Cinderella's castle is iconic, and it's right there when you walk in, and it's so amazing, and pictures are awesome, and that is all true, but that would be incorrect, because my priority is the Haunted Mansion. It's my favorite ride at Disney World. I have loved it since the first time I rode it as a child. That is me on my honeymoon 12 years ago with a picture in front of the Haunted Mansion, wearing my bride ears and everything, because it's my favorite. It's what I want to do. But it's not necessarily the first thing that people think of when they think of Disney World. And so my priorities are a little different. And so are our students. So we really push our students, in general, we often push for full-time schedules with students. It gets them done faster. Often their programs might be set up so that full-time works better for the whole curriculum. So it's also a win-win for us, obviously, because as a student taking more credit hours, but not every student should be a full-time student. If a student's working full-time, being a full-time student may not be a good option for them. It's hard to do more than one thing full-time. Students' grades in their classes. So for some students, straight A's is what they have decided they are going to get, and they will do anything they can, and they aren't settling for a B. And for other students, they're doing the best they can, and they get a C in the class, and they are excited about that because they worked hard. So every student has different priorities, and we have to remember not to project ourselves onto them, but to really listen to them and ask them probing questions so that we are on the same page at all times. Another thing we learn at Disney is to always be show ready. So I already mentioned at Disney, every customer is called a guest, not a customer, a guest. They're a guest in the park. Every employee, like myself, I'm not an employee, I'm a cast member. Now, in most contexts, if you said cast member, you think somebody who is, in a show on stage. I was not on stage, I was in a restaurant, but really, I was on stage because everyone who comes to Disney looks at all the people who work there and as a performance almost. And we represented Disney, and so people look to us for that. So we didn't have uniforms, we had costumes. I had a costume. It was blue pants and a white shirt and a vest, but it was still considered a costume. And so what we wear at Disney is really important. The idea is to always make sure our guests are uncomfortable, or our guests are never uncomfortable, and that they always have a positive experience, and that our clothing doesn't detract in any way. So that's kind of a lot to unpack there. But really, when you put it into education, it's just a matter of taking pride in the environment that you have and your appearance. So, for example, when my desk is super messy, that can be really anxiety-inducing for a student who's come in. If I try to keep things neat, or at least can hide my mess a little bit with a method to my madness, a student can be more comfortable. Sometimes you have to rearrange things on your desk. I had my desk set up at one point where I had this this big setup that had all these papers I could go through and look up information really quickly. And then one day I sat down in the student's chair on the other side of my desk, and I realized that is totally in the way of the student and even partially blocks their view. So that's not very welcoming at all. So just being aware of my environment helps me give better service to students. And then our own personal appearance as well. I don't wear a suit to work every day because that wouldn't work well with the job I do, I have to be approachable by students. But I'm also not going to show up in my ripped jeans and ratty t-shirt with a hole in it, because maybe that's comfortable, but that does not present a professional attire. And students look to us for that level of professionalism. So remembering that we are being watched is important. And giving a good appearance can sometimes make a good impression. Oh, I think I'm hearing my audio is low. Is it better now?
A little bit.
Okay, let me hang on real quick.
It was good at the beginning.
Please, everyone. I have the volume all the way up. Okay.
I didn't know if you had a mic that you moved. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm using my computer mic. Well, it doesn't help if nobody can hear me. So, let's see. Seems to be up. Okay, let me try one more thing. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I'm having trouble finding it, so I will just try to speak a little louder. Oh, it sounds like some people can hear me okay, so awesome. All right, well, I'm going to plow forward. If it gets too quiet again, let me know. All right, so anyway, again, being show ready has to do with our environment and making sure that students are comfortable. All righty, so another thing we learned at Disney is to always be striving for improvement. And so improvement, we always want to be data-driven in that at Disney. So one thing that always stood out to me, a story I learned when I went through my training, is that when Disneyland was brand new. So Disneyland out in California was built before Disney World in Orlando. So Disneyland was first. Walt wanted to build a place that people could enjoy a day with their kids, but they could all spend time together as opposed to watching their kids do rides that adults couldn't do. So when they first opened in 1955, Walt did a little experiment. He had candy available, wrapped candy, for guests as they came in the park. So they went through the turnstiles, they got their piece of candy, and then ventured on into the park. And so he and others watched to see just how far would a person go without any trash cans before they dropped that wrapper on the ground. And so they paid attention. They figured out about, how far people would go before they weren't willing to hold that trash anymore, and said, all right, we need to put trash cans in place that are close enough together that people are not tempted to throw their trash on the ground. We've got some data to support that, so here we go. So now if you go to a Disney park, you'll find that trash cans are never more than about 20 to 25 feet or so apart, because people won't go much farther than that before they start dropping their trash. So it's more convenient for their guests because they have a place to put their trash, but also it's great for the park because that is less cleanup that they need to do just because they had more trash cans available. And they didn't do this willy-nilly. They actually did some research into it to see where they needed to put these trash cans, how far apart. So it was always really important to look for improvement, but make sure you had a reason why you were doing what you were doing. We often had regular professional development and cross-training across different areas of the park. So even though I may never work outside of that restaurant, I still could answer a whole lot of questions about things because I'd been through training across areas. And that's definitely something we can do in the higher ed world. We never want to say to a student, oh, sorry, that's not my job. If they ask us a question we don't know the answer to. If we have some training across areas and can answer simple questions or at least know, hey, okay, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out. Or I don't know the answer to that, but I know who does. So let's go down to their office together so that we can both learn the answer to that and not give students the runaround, which is very easy to do. So being able to cross-train across departments and learn more about what our colleagues are doing allows us to give better service to our students. And then, of course, also, like I mentioned with data, using data when we make major changes or even smaller changes to our departments and our policies and procedures, really look at what's going to make a difference, because in the end, that's what is really going to support our students. Disney also finds it very important to provide an immersive experience. So, again, I talked about how Disneyland was built before Disney World. It's in, Los Angeles, it's in Anaheim. And so when Walt Disney bought some land for that, there was only so much available. So he bought some land, he built his park, and he was in his park one day riding one of the rides. And he realized as the ride went up, he could see the parking lot. And that just totally pulled him out of this experience that he was having with his kids. And so when Disney World was built, it was really important to him not to run into things like that. So the Imagineers, the engineers who work for Disney, they take great care when they build anything new that it is not going to take their guests out of their immersive experience. Because A, the guests will have a better experience, but that becomes a win-win for Disney, because people are having a good experience, are going to stay in the park long, and, for Disney being a business, they're going to spend more money. So it's a win-win for everyone, for Disney to really pay attention to detail. If you get used to Disney parks, you will see the difference when you go to other theme parks. So here's a great example of that. On the left in our picture here, that's the Morocco Pavilion at Disney World Epcot Park. So the Morocco Pavilion is all about Morocco, and the whole thing, depending on what you're looking at, so that tower is about 5 stories tall. Most of the Morocco Pavilion is about 3 stories tall, and it is situated around the back of a big lake that's in the middle of Epcot. That was built again in 1984. 10 years later, 1994, over in a totally different theme park at Disney World at what is now called Hollywood Studios, Disney began building the Tower of Terror, and you will see that on the right side of the picture. The Tower of Terror is, the attraction itself is a mile away from the Morocco Pavilion as the crow flies. So totally different park. Not even really all that close when it comes to theme parks. So they were making their plans to build it, and the Imagineers realized that from a small area in Epcot, on the other side of the lake, if you are looking across at Morocco, you were going to be able to see the Tower of Terror behind it. You can't see this from anywhere else in the park. It's a very small area. But that does not matter to Disney. That is still going to pull people out of their immersive experience, and they want to make sure that everyone is fully engaged. So they said, well, what can we do to make sure that the theming of the Tower of Terror would make it not stand out? And this is what they ended up with. So you can see Morocco kind of towards the foreground. And then at the top of the picture, you can see the top of the Tower of Terror. Sticking out above. Now remember, that is a mile away. It looks like it's just kind of sitting on top of Morocco and part of it. It blends in seamlessly. If you did not know what you were looking for, you would have no idea that you're noticing the Tower of Terror behind Morocco. It's an incredible piece of engineering and an incredible attention to detail. And that's how Disney does it. They want a completely immersive experience. So, along with the way they build their parks and their attention to detail, employees are trained to be proactive. So that if you see a guest that's looking lost, if you're lost for too long, you're probably not very happy, and that can cause some anxiety. So if we see a guest that looks lost, you just stop and ask them, hey, can I help you find something? If you see a family who's taking a picture and one member of that family has the camera and is taking a picture of the rest of the family, you step in and you say, hey, can I take this picture for you so you can all be in there together? These are simple, easy things to do that can make such a difference to those guests visiting Disney World. And we can certainly do that on campus. Honestly, just this morning, I walked in the door. My campus is a bit of a ghost town right now because classes are over, so there really aren't students here. But I walk in, and there is a student and a parent together, and they are staring at a directory on a wall here, and they look real confused. And so I had just walked in the door. I had not been to my office yet. I had my winter coat on, and I was all bundled up, and I had a bunch of stuff in my arms because I wasn't on this campus yesterday, but it took nothing for me to just stop and help. So I stopped and I asked if I could help them find something. They didn't know exactly who they were meeting with. That's okay. So I asked them a few more questions. Okay, you know you're meeting with an advisor. You don't remember their name. Well, what program are you interested in? Oh, okay, well, here's the 2 advisors it could be since you want a transfer program. And I got them where they needed to go. And it took 5 minutes of my time, and it made a huge difference for them this morning because otherwise they had no idea where to start. No one else is around. So it's very easy to do, but it's also very easy for us to get bogged down in our workspaces and not poke our heads up sometimes. So when you're walking around campus and you see something that maybe is outside of the realm of your specific job, it's okay to step in and help if you're able to help. In fact, that makes a huge difference for our students. It's also a good reason to remember to pay attention to branding rules, which can be difficult if you are making flyers or anything for your department. You probably know pretty well that KCTCS has very strong branding rules, and those are important because they give our students this immersive experience and they give them a certain feeling about KCTCS and your individual college that when they see a flyer that's been branded right, they immediately know it's one of ours. So things like that, super easy, just follow those rules. Also, it's easy to catch students where when they're kind of stuck in place. So for example, if they're waiting in line, we often have enrollment events here at Gateway. I'm sure some of you have done the express enrollment type events that KCTCS first started. Oftentimes we have students who are waiting for advisors. And so while they're waiting, other student services will come hang out with them and talk to them about their services and see if they need anything. They've got a captive audience. The student has nothing else to do. You might as well be giving them good, positive feelings about your college instead of the feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm waiting in line forever. All right, finally, we have wow moments at Disney. We try to make wow moments for people, and we try to remember wow moments for ourselves. So whenever it's possible, we try to go above and beyond for guests to make sure that they have a fantastic, positive feeling about Disney World. But also we try to remember those because not every day is perfect. We all know not every day is perfect. Sometimes you're just having a bad day, but you still need to be engaged with your guests and with your students so that they each get the same experience. And so remembering those wow moments, those feel good, those warm, fuzzy moments, that can help you be better at your job and give students a better experience because you have something to hold on to that helps you remember those things. At work, we can do these as well. You know, there's always those moments where students, something awesome happens, or you're able to help a student and it makes a difference for them. Don't forget to remember those things because they can come back and they can help you have a better day when you're working with the next student when the day's not going so well. Okay, so we have learned several things today about Gateway customer service. We know that every guest is important. We know that you need to always be show ready and appearance matters. We know that we should always be striving for improvement and using data to do that. We've learned that we need to provide an immersive experience for our students because it'll keep them coming back. And we have learned that wow moments matter. So when something happens that make you say wow, you celebrate them and you remember them. So let's bring this all back together and figure out what's the answer to the test. What time is the 3 o'clock parade? It's very easy to feel like you want to roll your eyes at that and think, my goodness, what do you mean? What time is the 3 o'clock parade? But the key to answering this question is remembering that guests and our students often don't know the right question to ask. So the answer to this question is the 3 o'clock parade will begin on time in Frontierland, but it's going to reach us here at Main Street, USA about 15 minutes later. There is a nice shady spot under this tree if you'd like to wait here. And that's how you answer the question. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I am excited to answer any questions that you might have. I know I kind of zipped through the end because I wanted to make sure we had time. So let me hop over and see at the chat. Let's see here. Don't see any.
A lot of kudos, Wendy.
Thank you, everybody.
Don't see any questions at this point. But I love your test, and I'm going to give another example of something that I heard not too long ago. I was at the Dollar Tree, you know, the store where everything is $1, and someone came up to the counter and asked the lady how much something was at the Dollar Tree. So, but she was very respectful, did that very same thing. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'll check that for you. Yep, that's just $1." So I mean, handled it the same kind of way, like your test question. But fabulous presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and with everybody. Great tips. And yeah, I think we could make KCTCS a magic place for our students so that they get the customer service that they deserve. So I greatly appreciate you sharing your experience with everybody. And this session has been recorded, so we will get this out with the rest of them as well. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions, just some great comments for you. So thank you again so much, Ms. Wendy. And if we don't see you beforehand, you guys have a great break.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Our next session, everyone, is going to be at 3 o'clock. So you've got about 30 minutes. This one will be from Maria Torres, providing outstanding service to distance learners and direct reports. So you're welcome to hang into this, just hang on right where you are, and when we get started, you'll be there. Or if you need to jump out and then come back when you have a moment, that is fine as well. I will go ahead and mute and get the recording stopped so that we can get that out there.